It may sound crazy, but the 2016 Dodgers draft class may already be one of the best in baseball history. Yes, you have the 1968 Los Angeles Dodgers draft class as well, which is headlined by names like Davey Lopes, Bill Buckner, Bobby Valentine, just to name a few. But when you look at the sheer volume of the 2016 Dodgers, it's really tough to beat the amount of big leaguers that they have. 2009 Anaheim Angels is another draft class that is pretty darn good and is rivaled by few. Of course, headlined by Mike Trout, and any draft class that has Mike Trout in it is already going to be one of the best ever. But the pick before Mike Trout, they had back-to-back picks, the Angels did. Randall Grichuk was the selection before, pretty solid big leaguer. You also had Patrick Corbin in that draft as well, the late Tyler Skaggs, and Garrett Richards. So a very, very good draft class, and ironically, some good pitchers in there for an organization that has just not been able to draft pitchers as of late. I'd still argue that this Dodgers class has a chance to be better than all of them, just because of how impressive it is to have 13 or more big leaguers in one singular class. According to Baseball America, less than 10% of players drafted who sign will ever accumulate more than a 0.1 WAR at the major league level. For context, that's based on a 40-round draft, which is what we became accustomed to prior to 2020. That is around 80, a little bit more than 80 players each year. We're going to see this Dodgers class potentially have, like I said, 15 or more, which would be a very large portion of that number that we've become used to, which is just blatantly absurd. So let's get into some of these names. Some you may know, some you may not be as familiar with, and some are on the rise, but there's no way around how much of a work of art this draft class was for the Los Angeles Dodgers and, of course, Andrew Friedman and company. Let's start with the first pick of the draft for the Dodgers. Not necessarily the best player, but could end up being one of the best players. He's still in development. He's still working some things out. But Gavin Lux. Gavin Lux was selected 20th overall, of course plays shortstop, second base, can move all over the infield, has already held his own at times at the big league level, was a former number 2 overall prospect, tore up the minor leagues for several years, hitting almost 400 in AAA at one point. Power, speed, has everything to offer, good defense when he's able to throw the ball, which I think he worked out over the last year. Lux has all-star upside. He hasn't quite put it together the way Dodgers fans had hoped, but this is still a really good impact big leaguer who's still only 24 years old and is going to get better and better. Potential tools across the board, and has already shown to be able to have some value and is a positive WAR guy. This is just one of the many picks, and he's still going to get better and better. Lux should have a decent role with the Dodgers team next year, and this is a guy that I think is going to continue to make the draft look better as the years move forward. The Dodgers' second pick in the draft is the big steal. If we did a redraft of 2016, Will Smith would probably be one of the first players selected, and he has just been spectacular at the big league level. Perennial all-star potentially behind the dish, one of the best offensive catchers already in baseball. The defense is coming along, still needs to work on limiting the run game a little bit, but overall has been just spectacular. 48 home runs in 221 games at the big league level. This guy's a superstar potentially, and a perennial all-star, as I said, a steal at the 32nd overall pick with Will Smith. The next selection, which was just 4 picks later for the Dodgers, is maybe not as exciting. It's Jordan Sheffield, right-handed pitcher who was from Vanderbilt at the time. He actually was taken away from the Dodgers in the Rule 5 draft by the Rockies and had a pretty solid season out of the bullpen last year, where he pitched to a 3.38 ERA in 29 1/3 innings at Coors Field. Relatively impressive, and also this is still just a big leaguer who's going to be around for a while. A good pick at 36th, because there's a lot of guys before that are probably not even going to break into the big leagues. So still not as exciting, but a good pick at 36 overall there. They just lost him in the Rule 5 draft because of the fact that the Dodgers 40-man roster is just so loaded. With the 65th overall pick, the Dodgers went with right-handed pitcher Mitchell White, who has already broken into the big leagues for the Dodgers as well. Of all of the pitchers, there were 4 pitchers that have broken into the big leagues selected in the second round. Mitchell White is the only arm with an ERA below 4, boasting a 3.66 ERA in 46 2/3 innings. He has made 21 appearances for the Dodgers, as well as 4 starts, and should be a piece for them for the next few years, to say the least. With the 101st pick, their third round selection, the Dodgers pulled off another absolute steal with Dustin May, who has pitched his way into becoming a top prospect, and then at the big league level started to really settle in with his triple-digit sinker that is nasty. a ridiculous breaking ball. He was looking the part of a frontline starter before going down with Tommy John surgery. Dustin May is going to be a frontline starter, in my opinion, for the foreseeable future when he returns from Tommy John surgery, and just a ridiculous steal at 101st overall. Probably will be, if not the best, the second best player in this draft class, right behind Will Smith. Absolute stud in the making here with Dustin May. At 131st overall, the Dodgers went with DJ Peters, an outfielder who did actually break in with the Dodgers a little bit last year when they were in a pinch with a lot of injuries. He dominated through the minor leagues, hitting 52 home runs in 257 games between AA and AAA. Ended up being sent over to Texas, where he played 70 games for the Rangers, hitting 13 home runs. He did struggle a little bit to just consistently hit, finish below the Mendoza line, but should be on the opening day roster. And again, another big leaguer with some power at the 131st pick for the Dodgers. The very next round, the Dodgers went with a left-handed pitching prospect in Devin Smeltzer, who ended up being packaged as part of the Brian Dozier trade, which you may have forgot. Oh yeah, Brian Dozier played for the Dodgers. He was part of that trade, has been a piece out of the bullpen for the Twins, and has made some spot starts as well. Ends up being a trade piece. That's a trend with some of these players in the later rounds, and that's still a crazy value to be able to get a 5th, 6th, 7th rounder and use them as a piece to help go get a big league option for you. Devin Smeltzer will stick around, as lefties seem to have 9 lives like cats, and he's good enough. In the 6th round, the Dodgers actually went with infielder Errol Robinson, who actually is no longer in affiliated baseball, if I'm not mistaken, but he did make this insane catch in an independent league game.
To make up ground. 2-1, gotta popping one up behind third. This might be trouble. Looper back goes to shortstop. Oh my word! Unbelievable! A bare hand catch on the run by Robinson. Holy moly!
In the 7th round, 221st overall, the Dodgers went with outfielder Luke Raley, who is another guy that broke in for the big league team last year. Did not have a ton of success, but when they were decimated by injuries early on, was able to step in and offer a little bit of insurance and depth for them. Could be a left-handed bat off the bench this coming season, and really did hit well when he was sent back down after his early struggles in the big leagues last year. Slash 294, 393, 570 with 19 home runs in a little over 300 plate appearances in AAA last year. Should get another look next season as a bench option. Another big leaguer in the 7th round. 30 picks later, the Dodgers scoop up Andre Scrubb, 251st overall. Scrubb, an unfortunate last name, but he has not been much of a scrub throughout his professional career. Pitched his way up through the minors and to actually being a decent trade piece for them. Sent over to the Astros for Tyler White. He has been a good arm, Scrubb has, out of the bullpen for the Astros. Dealt with some shoulder injuries last year and should be an option out of the bullpen next year for Houston. 9th round, 281st overall is another absolute steal. Potential rotation piece for the Dodgers this year. Tony Gonzalez out of St. Mary's. He can really chuck it when he's healthy, has dealt with his own arm issues as well. But so far through his big league career, when he is on the field, he has been great. In 142 and a thirds innings, he has pitched to a 2.85 ERA. Should compete for a rotation spot, and I think he will win one with the Dodgers going into next year. He's got great stuff, middle of the rotation type of potential, and in the 9th round, another good find by the Dodgers. A couple rounds later, in the 11th round, 341st overall, the Dodgers actually got a little creative and went over slot to try to sign away AJ Alexi from his Radford University commitment, and they were successfully able to do so with $500,000. He actually turned into a very solid pitching prospect for them and ended up being one of the main pieces in the Yu Darvish trade to bring Darvish over from the Texas Rangers. He was packaged with Willie Calhoun. Darvish comes over to the Dodgers. He's been all right, Alexi has, as a Ranger. Broke into the big leagues last year and should compete for some type of role, either as a swingman or a spot starter, bullpen arm. Regardless, the Dodgers were able to leverage Alexi as a piece in a deal to go get a frontline arm like Yu Darvish. In the 14th round, the Dodgers actually went with a guy you might be familiar with. If you're an Orioles fan, you might not be too fond of him, but he dominated through the minor leagues to earn himself a little bit of prospect value and ended up being part of the trade package for Manny Machado. It's Dean Cramer, who really carved up through the minor leagues. High A, Double A, was striking out more than 12 batters per 9 innings in the 2018 season, really boosted his stock, and the Dodgers packaged him over to go get Manny Machado. It has not been great for Cramer at the big league level, a 6.94 ERA in 72 1/3 innings, but hey, the Dodgers used another trade piece, and maybe Dean Cramer will be able to benefit from the Orioles moving the wall back in Camden Yards a little bit in left field. Still, 14th round, you got a solid piece to go get Manny Machado. In the 33rd round, and this is the last guy that I'll talk about that they actually signed, that's 1,001st overall, 1001 overall. The Dodgers selected Zach McKinstry. McKinstry, probably not an all-star, but a guy that actually played a good deal last year for the Dodgers. Again, a team that was beat up and had to go to the farm system to go get some insurance. McKinstry's a utility guy, can play all over the field, athletic. He hit 7 home runs, in 60 games for a 105-win Dodgers team. Was a big part of their depth and their bench options and should be a part of their team moving forward as well. McKinstry at 1,001st overall in the 33rd round is absurd. You just don't see players break into the big leagues drafted that late. And again, in comparison to a lot of the other bench bats that I mentioned selected in this draft, I actually like McKinstry the most and think he could hang around for several years as a very solid utility type option. Two really interesting guys that the Dodgers drafted but were not able to sign. Graham Ashcraft, right-handed pitching prospect now with the Reds, was drafted a year later and is my number 6 prospect in the Red system. I actually really like Ashcraft. They selected him in the 12th round, did the Dodgers, were not able to sign him, and it looks like they had a great eye there too, because Ashcraft looks like a middle of the rotation type of starter. The other current big leaguer that the Dodgers selected but were not able to sign was big, tall, 6'8", I believe, right-hander Bailey Ober, who is with the Twins, was later selected by the Twins and signed with them a year or two later. Ober is another guy that pitched well last year, 20 starts, a 4.19 ERA, and it was the next year that he was selected in 2017. But another guy that the Dodgers identified, thought that they could sign him, were not able to. Guess what? They identified another big leaguer in that crop too. This is just an outrageous draft class. You don't see anything like this in baseball because it's so hard. I told you the percentages. They were so stacked against them. And even the craziest part of all of this is the fact that this Dodgers draft class has already produced almost as high of a WAR as the entire first round combined from the 2016 class. It's just crazy to think about that. And the Dodgers, yes, you can say what you want about them spending a lot of money. Yes, they do spend a lot of money, but they know how to build a core. They know how to draft. They know how to develop, and they know how to identify talent. And I think that's something that really gets overlooked because of how high their payroll is. But a lot of their talent is homegrown. A lot of their veterans that they bring in are guys that are undervalued. The Dodgers are as well run of an organization as you're going to find in sports. And the 2016 draft class is just another example why.